Welcome to the Career Design Talks interview series, where I speak with successful professionals across industries to uncover their personal strategies and lessons learned on their way to building a successful and fulfilling career. Today, I'm speaking with Patrice Keitt, executive coach and partner at ClearPath Executive Coaching based in New York City. Her clients include executives, emerging leaders, and entrepreneurs who want to develop their leadership skills in order to make meaningful changes in their organizations and lives. Today, we'll be talking about her career path from big law associate to the luxury fashion industry to becoming an executive coach and certified mindfulness, meditation, and yoga instructor. And more specifically, how her mindfulness practice helped her successfully navigate those career pivots. Patrice, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mo. Good to be with you today. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have this conversation because you've got such an interesting background, both with the coaching that you're doing now and how you got there. So why don't we start from the beginning? Tell me a little bit about, as a former lawyer, I always love to talk to people about that decision, going to law school, and then we'll start with that and continue on our way. So why don't we start with that? Why law school?
Sure. Yeah, it's a good example. I wanted to be a lawyer from the time that I was a kid, really. So I went directly from, high school to undergrad to law school to big firm. And in a way, I kind of did it mindlessly, not mindfully, because
Right.
I never really, explored what was driving me to do that. It was that, I liked the idea of the profession. I liked the idea that it was prestigious, obviously. I like to learn, so that, intellectually it was stimulating. And they had an image of what a lawyer did or what a lawyer looks like. So it was, those were the drivers, but I never really stopped to think about, well, what are the skills that I'll be using and what will my life look like? And what does the profession really look like? So I was kind of, just going along in my bliss, right?
Right.
And when I got to a big firm, I was doing corporate work, mergers and acquisitions and private finance. I realized pretty early on, although I stuck it out for a while, that it didn't feel quite right to me. That it didn't really match what I was anticipating the practice to be.
Yeah.
So that kind of began the whole process. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
I feel like Law and Order influenced a lot of people who go to law school.
Yes.
A lot,
and LA Law.
LA Law, right? Yeah. Ally McBeal, all those great, exciting shows. And all of a sudden we get there and it's not exactly what we thought it was.
Yeah, I joke around. I say, I didn't want to be a lawyer. I wanted to play one on TV.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's great. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. Like they get to certainly learn, especially for smart people who like to learn, who are interested in these topics. Law school can actually be very enjoyable, but then the practice of law tends to be a different experience. So tell me about that. Like here you are, you're practicing, you're at a big firm, you kind of reached that sort of pinnacle. You've got the gold bar, of sort of what everyone wants. You've grabbed that gold ring here. How was that sort of decision-making process for you where you started to recognize that this wasn't a good fit for you?
Yeah. So I started just noticing that I wasn't excited about the work, that I didn't feel like passionate, that I didn't yearn to read the SEC bulletin or pore over credit agreements. It also, it had a lot to do with kind of how I'm wired. And in the coaching world, we use different assessments to look at, how people's personality types. And a lot of the work that I was doing was very isolating. It was due diligence and document production and drafting. And although I could do those things, they weren't skills that I enjoyed using, right? I wasn't naturally wired to do that kind of introverted work.
Right.
And I really craved more teamwork, more service. I liked the idea of customer service, but also I started to realize that I prefer to be on the business side of things. I prefer to be like the decision maker, or, as my husband would say, the boss. So I liked that role, but it really did take, it wasn't apparent at first. At first, it was just like this discomfort. Like, why don't I love this? Why do other people love it? I saw other people who were like so into it and so excited about it. And I would get so frustrated. Like, why isn't that me? So that was kind of the first step, just feeling the discomfort. And it wasn't until I kind of stumbled upon these practices of meditation,
Hmm.
mindfulness, that I was able to start to notice,
Yeah.
oh, I see what's going on here. This isn't really what I want to do.
Got it. Got
Um,
it. So you
yeah,
said something important there around first of all, sort of the day to day of being a lawyer. It felt like it was a lot of like isolation work, essentially
yeah,
sitting at your desk all day, poring over contracts and
yes,
doing research and drafting memos. I imagine very much a skill set and a way of working that probably appeals to certain people and not others. So
absolutely.
I think one thing our audience can take away from this is understanding um, your strengths and the way you like to work and how you like to spend your day. If you're someone who enjoys being an introvert and is more than happy to sit at a desk and pour over research and contracts and write, that's going to be great for you. And if you don't like that, that might not be the best way. That might not
Right.
be the career path for you.
And the thing is, you could do it. It doesn't mean you
Mhm.
can't do those things, but it'll be draining. It won't be
Right.
energizing, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if that's your chosen path and you're committed to it, you have to build in time to replenish.
Mm.
So whether that's through exercise, or whether that's through connecting with people, maybe
Hmm.
reaching out to colleagues or clients, then you have to build that in if
Yeah.
that's not naturally how you're wired.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good point. Also paying attention to your energy and which activities are
Hmm.
draining and which activities are
Hmm.
fulfilling. Were you finding that there was anything within the legal practice that you did enjoy that you did find fulfilling?
Interestingly, I would say I loved closings.
Yeah.
I loved getting the deal done, right? So that
Yeah.
was a piece of it, like the feeling of accomplishment. But I loved being with the client and serving the client and seeing
Hmm.
them pleased with the results. And so there was that
Yeah.
real experience of service
Yeah.
that I liked.
And connecting with other people, right?
Yes,
You're
yes,
no longer
yes.
alone in your office. Yeah.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay,
Yeah,
great. So you mentioned sort of through this period you started reading books on meditation
I
and going
did.
down that direction. Can you say a
Hmm.
little bit more about that? Like, why meditation and not like sailing or something else? Like
Right, right, right. Right.
what
I did that
attracted you?
too. Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive, right?
Yeah, true, true.
But yeah, well, because like I said, I love to learn, and I
Hmm.
think a lot of lawyers are like this too. We think we can figure stuff out, we can do research, right? You go to the science, right?
Right.
So the evidence, the facts. So I started reading, like, okay, what do people do to like kind of quiet their mind, or even just like reduce anxiety,
Hmm.
find some peace of mind.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think the first book I read was by Joan Boris-Senkoff. It was called Minding the Mind. I think it was Minding the Mind, Mending the Body.
Hmm.
And it was fascinating because she talked about how the brain works and how we can actually kind of shift our energy and shift our brain function from kind of that fight or flight side
Hmm.
of the brain, of the nervous system, to the rest and digest side of the nervous system, and experience these moments of kind of being calm and centered and clear, where
Hmm.
you can find kind of a clarity about what is it what is it that I want, what is it that is fulfilling to me, what
Hmm.
are my values. So I discovered it, and when I first started doing it, it was like a minute of sitting
Yeah.
in meditation was torture. Like 10
Yeah.
seconds was torture, which is
Sure.
what I hear a lot from people.
Right.
You hear, oh, I can't do meditation, I can't stop thinking. And the point is, well, a couple points. Number one, join the club. Like, that's the
Yeah, that's
human
everybody.
condition, right? Right.
Right.
That's what Dan Harris calls the fallacy of uniqueness, right? We think we're so unique, but everybody
Right.
has that issue. But
Yeah.
also, it's not even so much, especially mindfulness practices aren't so much about stopping the thoughts.
Hmm.
It's about being the observer of the thoughts.
Right.
So being able to create the time and the space so that you could start to recognize, separate from your
Yeah.
thoughts,
Yeah. So
you know?
that's such an important point here. So, I think it's great to sort of let people know that. So here you are, you're sort of in this big firm environment. You're recognizing you're not liking it. Sounds like you were recognizing maybe the stress and anxiety of that sort of experience,
Yes, yes.
and and the fact that you were able to sort of find these tools to help you separate from that stress and anxiety. So, when I talk to a lot of people, they're starting coaching with that stress and anxiety, and that's one of the first places I'll go with clients is to help them understand that who you are now approaching this process isn't going to be the same person who can fix the problem, right? So there's
Right.
fundamentally there needs to be a shift in how you're approaching this. And so I think aligned with what you're saying here is, um, people might be stuck in fight or flight mode and they're really fearful of making a change.
Hmm.
Um, but living in that fear isn't going to be helpful as we sort of navigate you to a successful outcome. I
That's
wonder if you
right.
could say more about that, this idea of going from, as you put it, like fight or flight to rest and digest. Like, how
Yeah.
is that important? And the point about we are not our thoughts, but we're the observer of our thoughts. How do the
Right.
rules and strategies work for the people you work with and work for you?
Yeah. So from the switching from kind of left to right brain piece,
Hmm.
they really are I don't know if you've ever seen Jill Bolte Taylor, who wrote My Stroke of Insight. She talks about how we're really like two people within our brains. They're
Yeah.
very different hemispheres, the left and the right, and they function very differently.
Hmm.
And we spend much of our time, especially as lawyers, in the left side of the brain, right? The
Right.
linear, logical thinking, sequential thinking.
Hmm.
Whereas the right side of the brain is the more creative, the more intuitive, the part of us that feels connection and feels energy,
Hmm.
relates to energy. So that ability to do practices that actually make a physiological shift in the brain functioning, in the brain activity, to
Hmm.
kind of light up that region of the brain so that you then have access. It's almost like you widen your vision. You
Right.
do widen your vision. You see more, you see
Hmm.
clearer, you see possibilities. So being able to tap into that is not really, it's not about like, oh, woo woo feel good stuff. It's
Sure.
actually a strategy. I teach that to my clients as being a strategy
Hmm.
to get to clear thinking, to get to focus,
Right.
and then
Right.
to be able, to your point, to be able to observe your thoughts. You
Hmm.
start to recognize that, oh, I'm not my thoughts, I'm the thinker of my thoughts, right?
Yeah.
I'm the observer of my thoughts. So I can choose. I can choose to either take a thought as valuable or that I want to believe it, or I
Hmm.
can dismiss thoughts that don't serve me.
Yeah. Yeah. I like how you put
And
that. It
yeah,
shifts you to clear thinking.
yeah,
When you can observe your thoughts, you have then that space to choose which thought can be helpful and which is not serving you.
yeah. And
Yeah.
that was another thing that was so fascinating about this process for me in the transition. Everything that I started doing
Hmm.
reinforced this message. So I started studying, well, first I started as a student of yoga. Again,
Hmm.
well, I was a lawyer for kind of exercise and stress reduction.
Hmm.
And the particular school of yoga that I study was very much about the mind piece as well as the body,
Yep.
the meditation piece. So there is this concept in yoga of viveka, clear seeing, right? This is the
Hmm.
ancient yogis knew this,
Yeah.
but these are practices that serve us today.
Sure. Just
Um,
just fundamental, like,
yeah,
life best practices. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I really like that term clear thinking because to your point, sometimes meditation can doesn't feel relatable to some people, but I think,
Hmm. Hmm.
especially lawyers, right? So,
Yeah,
but if you put in those terms like clear thinking,
yeah,
these are real like hard
yeah.
strategies that people can apply to really assess the situation clearly.
That's right. And
Yeah.
focus, it's
Hmm.
and it's a discipline. And what I do, we use the term, and I work with people, it's like Jedi mind. It's getting
Hmm.
to that point where you can be laser focused without the distractions. It's
Yeah.
quieting down the extraneous chatter so that you can focus on what's in front of you. Even
Yep.
if what's in front of you is difficult or challenging,
Hmm.
you know what, you can't run away from those things. That's life, right?
Right.
You've got to learn how to like surf the waves.
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And to your point, this mindfulness practice really helps you, like to your point, it really helps you improve your performance with whatever you're doing because you're present,
Mhm.
you're seeing things as
Mhm.
it should be, you're choosing how you want to see it versus being sort of clouded by judgment and fear and anxiety and things like
That's
that.
right.
Awesome.
That's right.
Awesome.
And it's
Okay.
funny you use the term judgment. That's great because another kind of other terminology that we use
Hmm.
is that you go from the judging mind
Hmm.
to, or that judging mind can sabotage your thinking
Right.
as opposed to your sage mind. So we
Yes.
make that distinction. You want to come from their sage
Lots of
place,
wisdom.
especially if you're lost my earbud,
Yeah.
especially when you're considering things like, what do I want to do with my life? Is this
Yeah.
the career for me?
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want your fearful mind making that decision for you,
That's
right? You want
right.
your
That's
calm,
right.
centered, with wise mind making that version of yourself, making that decision for you. All right.
Yeah.
So you're in big law. You're immersing yourself in the world of yoga and meditation. What happens next?
So I did, as I did with the meditation for the career issue, I started reading every book I could. So it was, what color is your parachute?
Yeah.
Do
All
what you
right.
love, the money will follow.
Sure.
I could do anything if I knew what it was. I mean, I have them all in my library.
Yeah.
And it was through that process that I discovered this idea of career coaching or counseling.
Hmm.
And I found someone who was recommended to me
Hmm.
and started working with her, and went through the process that we go through now with clients in terms of different exercises, different research, trying things on, and then also being, this is again where the mindfulness came in,
Hmm.
having beginner's mind,
Hmm.
which means being okay not knowing, right? Being
Yes.
open, right? Being open to not having the answer
Yep.
and not ruling anything out before you've actually given it a chance.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Absolutely.
like, even if something sounds ridiculous and you think, oh, I couldn't possibly consider that, you give it its day in the sun
Hmm.
so that you can kind of pick it apart and
Right.
find out, well, what is it? Let's unpack that. Why did I say I want to be, the Queen of Sheba, whatever?
Right.
What is it about that appealed to me?
Yeah.
You know?
So you start working with this career coach, and what did you find helpful about the process? You mentioned she gave you some research and assessments and things like that, some
Sure.
exercises, I'm sure. Tell us a little bit about what you found effective
Sure.
in that work.
So definitely the assessments, the whole process is about self-awareness,
Hmm.
discovery. So the assessments came in handy for understanding some of the things we talked about before, like how are you naturally wired? Why does that feel uncomfortable? Like,
Hmm.
yeah, you can do that, but why does it drain you? Also discovering what we call motivated skills.
Hmm.
We all have a wide range of skills, but we don't love using all of them.
Right.
So you might be a great writer, but if you don't like the process, maybe
Hmm.
that's a skill that you don't want to use that much. You'll pull it up when
Sure.
you need to, but I
Yeah.
don't want to base my career on that, right?
Right. Right.
So that was really helpful, identifying motivated skills. Also identifying that idea of kind of separating from your thoughts also
Hmm.
applied when it came to separating from other people's judgments and thoughts.
Oh, great point. I'm
Because
glad you
because when you go through this process,
mentioned
you're going to get all kinds of advice or all
Yeah.
kinds of opinions about what people think you should be doing or not doing, or what you're
Hmm.
giving up or not giving up. So you have to be able to kind of center yourself and
Hmm.
recognize that, oh, okay, they're telling me everything about them and
Yep.
nothing about me,
Yep.
you know?
Right, right, right. I'm so glad you brought that up, because even just yesterday, this topic came up with a client where I felt like he was checking off the three biggest fears, the most common fears I hear clients go through when they're thinking about making a big career change, and another
Yeah.
attorney as well. It was a fear of uncertainty. He's kind of
Yeah.
stepping into the unknown. It
Yeah.
was a fear of failure, making a mistake or choosing incorrectly,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
very much the fear of judgment of other people's
Yeah.
opinions, um,
Yeah.
and all these things were really paralyzing him. And
Yeah.
so, to your point, I mean, these are such critical and common fears that can be overcome with mindfulness work. So,
Yeah.
what I want to point out is, as you're working with this career coach, it wasn't like you were looking at job titles or companies or trying to figure out the right job. It sounds like you started with understanding yourself better, right? So
That's
the
right.
self-awareness practice, the understanding your motivated skills and things like that. So I think that's critical
Correct.
for our audience to understand, is
Yes. Yes.
starting with that internal work is so important, and you shouldn't skip over that.
That's right.
That's kind of where the juice is when it comes to, or the effectiveness is when it comes to coaching.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
So you're working with this career coach.
yeah.
Are you getting
And then
some clarity? Are you getting
yeah, you start to
some
get
hits?
clarity. You start to
Yeah.
find things that you're like, yeah, this is really, I want to use this skill or I want to use that skill. And at that point, then it's kind of coming up with, I said, I came up with my mantra at the time, it was like I came up with an image of what I wanted it to look like. And for me, I knew I wanted to be on the business side, not the legal side.
Hmm.
I really loved product and kind of making, selling something, right?
Hmm.
And I liked the luxury market,
Hmm.
partly because just the quality. I loved quality, but
Sure.
also I did like the prestige of it. I mean, I had come from a prestigious university, a prestigious law firm, so
Hmm.
there, that you have to recognize that about yourself. That was
Right.
important to me,
Yep.
not in a superficial snobbish way. It was just that was meaningful to me.
Sure.
So I said, well, I want to be president of Chanel. Why? Because it was in charge, right? The boss.
Hmm.
It was
Yeah.
French. Because I also wanted to use my French language skills.
Right.
It was fashion, luxury.
Hmm.
So that became like, okay, what does that look like?
Yeah.
How do you do that? What's the path? What's the how do you even begin? So then that became that began that exploration.
That's great, right? So it's almost like
Yeah,
you created this vision really based on your interests of luxury
yeah,
fashion, French,
yeah.
being a boss.
Business, yeah.
You kind of piece that little puzzle together, and you have this kind of vision that you were shooting for.
Yes,
Awesome.
exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly. And then again, it was every step of the way, you encounter obstacles without a doubt. You're
Yeah.
internal and external. So
Right.
it's not only what other people are saying, but you start to doubt yourself, like your
Mhm.
client that you were talking about.
Right.
What am I doing? Is this really the right thing? What are people going to say? I don't know where I'm going. All of those things, they keep coming up. It's
Right.
not like, oh, I solved that. No, you're going to be
Yeah.
confronted with it over
That
and
that's
over
that
again.
that's such a good point because it's not like you figured it
Yeah.
out once and it's smooth sailing.
Yeah.
You're now dealing with that self-doubt as you continue to grow and step out of your comfort zone and step into these new fields. It's normal for you to have those feelings of self-doubt and wondering what you're doing with your life and are you making the right
Ex-
decision? Yeah.
Absolutely, without a doubt, and
Right.
especially if you're changing industries
Hmm.
completely,
Hmm.
that comes up a lot. Some career change is within your profession, and it's just in a
Sure.
different environment. But that
Hmm.
also, can evoke, stress or anxiety or uncertainty. So it comes up across the board. But if you are making a big shift to do something very different,
Yeah.
you'll have a lot of saboteurs come out and try to doubt you.
Yeah.
Um, and that's where that uncertainty comes in, that judgment.
Yeah.
um, and even that, with the uncertainty, what I tell people is, this is an original, obviously. Many great people have said this, including Martin Luther King. You don't have to see the whole staircase, you just have to
Right.
see the next step, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So that's what you look for, the step that has the most light on it, that has the
Mhm.
the clearest, and then you take that step, and then you look for the next step.
Yeah.
That's a process that does benefit, or is easier, I should say, if you are able to, practice kind of patience and mindfulness, being present.
Hmm.
That's what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is paying attention in the present moment on purpose, right? With
Right.
intention, without judgment. That's the key. Without
Yeah.
judgment.
Yeah. That's so,
Yeah.
I mean, you're saying so many good things here, and this is so useful to our audience here who might be thinking about making a career change. Um, this idea of, and I kind of use the same analogy of taking it one step at a time because you have
Yeah.
to, right? I think a lot of clients I speak to sort of have this image in their head that they have to take this huge leap of faith and figure out this whole new career path in one step, right? Like they have to figure
Yeah.
out what they
Yeah.
want to do before they even do anything.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
that's what keeps them stuck, right? Is that
mm-hmm.
frame of that's sort of thinking is what keeps them stuck. So my advice to them is always about let's take this huge decision that you want to make and chunk it down into smaller steps and just work on one step at a time. And then it becomes doable. Then you can actually take some action steps without feeling like you're risking your career
That's right.
to do
That's
something
right.
new. So that's a really
That's
good
that's
point.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
would say action precedes clarity.
Hmm. Yeah.
You might not have the whole picture yet, but you've got this much of the picture.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. So
And to
now,
that point also, Mo, just
yeah.
that idea of that taking that little step,
Hmm.
it's like you're trying it on. You're
Right.
trying it on for size, right? And if it feels good, and you're like, okay, that step feels good. I'm going to take the
Right.
next step.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you're getting feedback, right? Like of
Yes.
this feels right. Okay, I can this is working for me. I'll continue going down this path. So to your point, that's so important. So were you
Yeah.
getting that feedback as you were navigating leaving law and stepping into the world of luxury
Yeah,
fashion?
as I was doing the research and networking, I felt like I was onto something, right? It
Hmm.
felt like, oh, this is starting to feel like something I want to do. This is starting to feel like more of me. So, and a few not missteps, but a few divergences. Like I say, a clear path isn't always a straight line. You kind of go
Right.
down one path, and then you take a turn, and then you take a turn. So,
Right.
and it eventually led me to the thing that transitioned, my transition out of law into fashion.
Hmm.
And it didn't start out as a French company,
Hmm.
but I worked at an Austrian company, the U.S. Subsidiary of an Austrian company,
Hmm.
but it was luxury fashion, and that was the first step. I did end up at a French company, and I ended
Yeah.
up running it. I ended up being the president, so and being a part owner.
Wonderful.
So at that point, I said, "Wow, I'm president of Chanel." Now it
Yeah.
wasn't Chanel, but what I also realized was that, you know what, I didn't really want to be president of Chanel per se, because I didn't want a big company. I come from a
Okay.
big firm. I didn't want a big
Right.
company. I wanted to build something. And so I became part of a French company, French fashion design company, that
Hmm.
was basically a startup that we were building.
Nice.
So I was building it with my French partners, opening
Right.
stores all over the United States.
Hmm.
So it was like, oh, look, I got here.
Yeah.
This is my Chanel,
That's
you know?
fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I wonder if you can maybe think back to your point, like as you're taking these small steps and trying things on and see if it fits right. Um, do you remember what some of those clues were for you? What some of those moments were where you were like,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm heading down the right direction.
Yeah, yeah. When I my first transition out
Hmm.
of the law, I started with a company was called Wolford. They were just starting in the United States, and it was
Hmm.
owned by a venture capitalist here in the U.S. who had the rights to open all the stores in the United States. At the time, he had one store on Madison Avenue,
Hmm.
but through my networking, I had learned that he had this big business plan. That he had other interesting business plans. So I figured, all right, I have to get to know this person. So I met with him, and I
Hmm.
said, look, I'll start in your store. I'll start in your Madison Avenue store, $12 an hour plus commission.
Yeah.
And from being a corporate lawyer,
Sure.
so I knew that I was on the right track, because that didn't feel like drudgery to me. It
Oh,
didn't feel
okay.
like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. It was like, this is fun. I was working with customers. I was learning about the product. We had to do training in Austria. It was, we were on Madison Avenue. It was a
Right.
very interesting product, and it was busy. The product was very hot. It was a
Yeah.
very popular item. So it was very active. And
Nice.
that suited me much more than the solitary work behind the desk.
So again,
So
it feels like it sounds like you're pointing to it felt right, right? That feeling, the
yes,
energy was
yes.
there. Got it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I knew, I'm like, this is a stepping stone. This isn't where I'm ending
Sure.
up.
Right.
So I could be comfortable with that, taking that step back,
Hmm.
because I knew it was going to lead me to so much more.
Yeah.
And within a few months, I moved to the corporate office, and I became, basically his right hand to open all the stores, to build the brand, to build all of the employment policies because of my legal background, to look at contracts for real estate, and all of that just kind of fell into place
Right.
naturally.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you've made it. You're in the fashion industry.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're doing what you want to do there. Then you move into coaching and you
Yeah.
then get
Yeah.
certified. Tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
that. What has now led you to this stage of your
That, yeah,
career?
no, that's true. So once I was with after Wilford, I was with a French company, and I did end up selling my interest in that company. So that was
Hmm.
my exit plan for that.
Yeah.
So I was at another crossroads. It's like, okay, what next?
Yeah.
And I did look at doing the same thing with other French companies. I looked at a few different career options,
Hmm.
but again, I kind of came back to, but what is it? Like, what are my values? What do I really love doing? How do I want to be in the world?
Hmm.
And I kept coming back to, this time it was like, well, I love teaching. I love sharing what I'm learning. I love helping people.
Hmm.
I love learning myself. And at that time, because I just sold my company and I had free time, I was giving myself a break. I
Yeah.
myself was studying acting and singing, which I still do to
Oh,
this
great.
day. I still love
Yeah.
those things. But all of these things, I started thinking, hmm, I could put these together, my experience changing careers, my
Hmm.
critical thinking skills that I learned as a lawyer, my managing teams and groups of people when I was building companies and
Hmm.
dealing with leadership issues, my even what I was learning, acting and about presentations and my yoga and meditation. Wow, these kind of all can be put together in service of helping others through coaching.
Yeah.
So that's when, and I had, colleagues who were doing it. So I became curious about the work.
Right.
And then again, just started doing the research, started trying it on, started taking some certification courses for coaching,
Yeah.
started doing some facilitations for companies in
Hmm.
areas that I already had expertise in,
Yep.
like the meditation and the mindfulness. And same thing all along the way. I'm like, oh, this feels right. This feels
Nice.
right. That was
Yeah.
fun.
Right.
You
Right.
know?
Okay. So I'm starting to see a theme here that's worked for you of paying
Yeah.
attention to what feels right, the energy, trying things on, taking these sort of small action steps to try things on,
Yeah.
and then the power of your network. It sounds like there were some people along the way that were able to help you make these pivots as well.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
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 So take us to a little bit about your sort of mindfulness practice in the executive coaching space. How are you working with clients? What are some of your favorite go-to strategies for helping
Yeah.
people make these types of decisions?
Yeah. It's actually quite amazing how ubiquitous this is. Like this is a really issue that cuts across so many
Right.
different people and different professions. So invariably, at some point in the coaching, we
Hmm.
do incorporate some exercises where they just practice kind of sitting quietly, focusing on the breath, or any present moment sensation. It could be like just sitting and focusing on their sense of hearing, what they're hearing in that moment. It could be focusing on their sense of touch in that moment. Just that simple act of rubbing two fingers together with so much attention that you feel the lines in your fingers. That
Hmm.
shifts. It shifts your brain
Right.
from one region of the brain to the other. So teaching them these little techniques, these little tricks that they can use consistently. The key
Yeah.
is to kind of make it a practice so that if they're feeling confused, if they're feeling stressed, if they're feeling just at a loss,
Hmm.
they can fall back on these techniques,
Okay.
use them to regather, to
Right.
find clarity,
Yeah.
to tune in. You
Hmm.
know this from coaching. We say that our clients are creative, resourceful, and whole.
Right.
Right? They've got the answers within,
Right.
but often they need the techniques, the tools, the sounding board, the someone to hold them accountable. That's where the
Sure.
coach comes in, right?
Right.
But the process really is about going inside and listening to your wisdom.
Right.
You know what's best for you. I don't know what's best for you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's great. So I like the sort of the practicalness of that sort of body sensation where it's like
Yeah,
because now you have to focus on this, right, and not the other thing that you're going crazy about
that's
struggling
exactly
over, right?
right.
So that kind of
That's
training,
exactly
I can
right.
see how useful that is.
It is. We call it's like building a mental fitness. It's mental
Hmm.
fitness. It's building self command. So your
Yeah.
mind wants to go over here, you
Hmm.
take it back over here, or you take it
Right.
back to the breath. Then your mind wants to go over there, you bring it back. Now your mind's going to continue to do that. It's going to
Sure.
fight you,
Right.
But the more you do it,
Hmm.
the easier it becomes, the more accessible it becomes, the more you can break the cycle.
Right. Right. And so
Yeah.
take us to the other side of that. So now they've built this practice, they're able to sort of not get sort of lost in thought, but to become present. And then what's available when someone's present?
Mm. Yeah, then it's all then there's the treasure, right? Then
Right.
then it's all then it is your wisdom, right?
Right.
You can ask yourself questions. You can think about what is important to me. What do I want in my life?
Hmm.
What is missing?
Right.
What do I want in my life? But it might not be my career. Like
Hmm.
it might be your avocation, not your vocation. I mentioned that I studied, acting and singing. I
Hmm.
didn't want that as a career. Probably I wasn't good enough to have it as a career, but but I love it. So
Yeah.
it's still something that I incorporate into my life.
Sure. Something important to you.
Um,
Yeah.
so and believe it or not, those things have an impact on your career. We're whole people. We're not just
Right.
a career. So when you have a richness and a fullness in other parts of your life, it
Hmm.
actually feeds you to
Yeah.
be even better when you show up at work,
Right. Right. That's a great point. That's a great
Yeah.
point. Not to be
Yeah.
so one dimensional and just focus on your
Yes.
profession, right? It's okay to
Yeah.
have different parts of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that becomes part of the experience.
So this has been such a rich conversation, not only in your journey, but how mindfulness has played a
Yeah.
part in that. And now here you are coaching and teaching
Yeah.
others
Yeah.
on how to do it as well.
Yeah, and
Um,
I always say to people, it's like I feel like everything that I did led me to this point. I have, no regrets. I loved
yeah.
law school. I'm glad that I did it. I'm
Right.
glad that I was at a big firm. I feel like that was the path, and
Yeah.
I just had to keep taking one step at a time.
Right. Right. And that's a great way to
Mhm.
put it. Right. Nothing is lost. Right. You've simply
No,
just built on your experiences. They've all sort of led you
that's
to
right.
this point. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a great place to put it. So as we wrap up here, I'd love to maybe leave with a parting thought. So what are some of your um, favorite ways to think about sort of how mindfulness can really help people as they're sort of navigating any kind of career decision?
it doesn't help to just have the intellectual understanding of what it is.
Hmm.
To have the insight, you have to have the practice. You have to build the muscle. So
Right.
there are formal practices of sitting and meditating, which are wonderful, but
Hmm.
can be overwhelming for some people. So what I always encourage people to do is you start to incorporate it into your life.
Okay.
So, and I did this so many years ago. So if you're brushing your teeth,
Hmm.
feel the texture of the toothbrush on your gums,
Mm,
taste the mint of the toothpaste,
right.
right? If you're washing the dishes, feel the temperature of the water on your hands, see the plate in front of you.
Right.
If you're walking, feel your feet, feel your toes, feel, it's that constant, you have constant opportunities throughout the
Right.
day
Yeah.
to come back to present moment sensation.
Yeah. That's a
Feel your
great point.
seat
It's not like we need to have the quiet room with the yoga mat and a candle light, right?
that's right.
Especially
That's
in
right.
today's environment where we're stuck at home.
That's
Any
right.
moment can be turned into a mindful moment. It sounds like.
Yes, yeah. One of my favorites, and I think people really resonate with this, is if you're just sitting there and you don't even have to close your eyes, you can keep them open, but just tell yourself to hear, what's the farthest away sound I can hear?
Mm,
And you really have to concentrate, right? And then
right.
what's the closest sound I can hear? Often it's your breath, but it could
Hmm.
be anything.
Right.
And just that act of going back and forth, like you said before, takes you right into the present moment.
Right. Right. Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
this is everything I've read, but such a good reminder to really build up that practice. Because to your
Mm-hmm.
point, you
Mm-hmm.
can't just read about it. You can't just
That's
know
yeah.
this intellectually. You've got to really
Yeah.
embody this work. So
Yes.
listen, thank you
Yes.
so much for your time today. I mean,
No, my pleasure.
sharing so much sage wisdom.
Yeah, no, it's
The
it's great
best.
to be with you. I appreciate you're doing this for people. It's a great service.
Yeah, no. Well, this is fun for me. To your point, right? This gives me energy. I love having
Yeah.
these conversations and
Yeah.
getting to share the knowledge with the audience. So again, thank you so much for joining me today. Really appreciate you having us on the show.
Thank you. Well, good to see you.
Welcome.
Take care.